Welcome, Teri. I am so excited to be connecting with you again, to be able to have you as a guest so that we can share all of your expertise, your journey starting your business. But before we dive into all that, I would love for you to take a moment to share a little bit more about you from a personal perspective.
Yeah, hello. I'm so excited to be here. I know our this conversation was long overdue. I'm so excited to catch up with you and talk to your audience. And yeah, so I'm Terry. I'm a marketing and brand consultant, but most importantly, I'm just a girl with a dog who is building a business. I've been at home a lot lately because my puppy just had surgery, so dealing with some personal things on that end, but really a little bit more about me. Like personally, a lot of people don't know this about me, but I love antiquing. That's like my go-to thing on the weekend. I love being outdoors when I'm not working, spending time with my partner Jason, walking my dog. And I like to think, like, to kind of open it up with the personal aspect of me, because I think a lot of us dart straight to like our opening line about how we identify in our business as a CEO or a founder. But entrepreneurs are so many things. And so there's a lot to me that extends outwards other than my business. And how I've become an entrepreneur today was ultimately a result of the activities I do in my day to day, the people that I've met, the things that I've tried. So that's a little bit about me. I'm originally from a super small town up north, but I've been living just south of Toronto for almost 5 years now. After going to university, I kind of stuck in this area post grad. But coming from a small town definitely has shaped me in good and bad ways as an entrepreneur. It's definitely put some barriers and blocks in my mindset as to how big I could dream. So I'm really proud that I can say I'm self-employed and I've been running my business full time for 2 years, coming from a mindset that kind of told me otherwise. And maybe we can touch on that later. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That's amazing. I definitely do want to dive into that. We
Mhm.
were talking about your puppy being going through the recovery stage. Everything is good, hopefully. Everything
Yeah,
is healing well.
it's hard to keep him calm. I've had to have him on trazodone. He's a French bulldog, so he's just been like, he doesn't think he's hurt, like he's on painkillers and trazodone and he's running around and I'm like, you can't have the zoomies right now, like you can't. But he does. So unfortunately, he's had to been crated, which I hate saying that, but it will be
It's
short-lived.
temporary. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
temporary.
Yeah.
All right, so let's dive into this. Let's start prior to you having your business. What were you going to school for? What were your dreams? Did you have an idea of being an entrepreneur? Like, was that even, you said, that didn't really fit what you had thought previously, but what
Yeah.
exactly was going on in your mind previously?
Yeah, I love to start with sharing the story about like 7-year-old Terry because I've thought like an entrepreneur most of my life, and I think that has a lot to do with my family and the values and the lessons that they taught me, because a lot of people in my family are also self-employed and entrepreneurial. So when I was 7 years old, I kind of started dabbling down the entrepreneurial path without even knowing it, because I started this little sparkle headband hot glue business where I would like scavenge all these materials and I would create like custom headbands and I would sell them at the end of my driveway. And whenever I was not trying to sell them, and by the way, literally no one bought them, like zero people walked by. Okay. I made $0, but it's okay because I was seven. My dad would help me draft like marketing tactics for my headbands and what I could say to people when they walked by and how to build them better. So naturally from a young age, I built up this grit that I think a lot of successful entrepreneurs have, like to get gritty and, go through the trenches and put your ego aside and don't be afraid to look stupid. I learned all of that from a very young age, and I was always the one kid in the room that would try to create something from nothing. I always wanted to like take control of my own life and do my own things. So that feeling has been in me for a very long time. And I ended up going to university for marketing, business, and leadership for a 4-year degree. And honestly, if I could do things differently, I actually might have gone to college and pursued something that could have allowed me to be more hands on. And university, I felt, kind of put me in a box. It kind of really, really tried to push me down that corporate path, which honestly I've known my entire life wasn't for me. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's for some people 100%. I just knew it wasn't for me. And university, I felt, tried to put me in that space. So when I graduated, it was actually right at the tail, like right as the pandemic started, is when I was graduating. Sorry, no, the pandemic started in my fourth year. So I had to go through my fourth year of university all online. And, that was a whole other
It's a big
thing. But
change.
it was a big change, but basically what happened was there wasn't a lot of jobs because everyone was getting laid off. And I was like, well, what a better opportunity to start creating my business plan because everyone is taking EI and just watching Netflix. And I thought to myself, I'm never going to have this amount of time ever again with peace, at least. People aren't out, they're not doing things. I'm not afraid of missing out on going to the movies with my friends or hanging out with whoever. I can literally sit here and I have all the time in the world to map out the details. So that's where it really was born, in my student home bedroom. And while seemingly the world was falling apart around me, I really knew that no one was coming to save me. That was the outcome. And I feel like a lot of individuals, they talk about their dreams and their aspirations as if they'll never happen. Like they chalk it up to their imagination. And in that moment when I was sitting in my bedroom with nothing to do, I really told myself that, like, if I kept waiting to get lucky, if I kept wishing to have certain things, I would never realize the vision I imagined for myself. Mind you, this is not something you ever stop working towards. We're always working towards our vision and wanting what we want, but I really leaned on taking imperfect action during that time, and that's what led me really to where I am today. It's a lot.
All right. It's a lot for sure. I definitely resonate with the whole childhood experience.
Yeah.
I didn't have anybody in my circle that worked a 9 to 5. Like
Yeah,
now
that's
looking back,
awesome.
I didn't realize it back then, like what it even meant or anything. And it's so interesting that I was like also doing things just naturally, just trying to figure out how to make money
Mhm.
myself, like lemonade sign, like doing all these different like thingies that you can make money as a child. And then just naturally just wanting to start businesses in my early 20s. And I had no idea
Yeah.
what it even meant. Like I didn't know I was like becoming an entrepreneur. Like that just wasn't
Yeah.
something that was discussed. I don't know if your family ever like had conversations with you about what an entrepreneur does, like starting your own business versus like the corporate 9 to 5 and like
Yeah. It's so funny you say that because I don't think I was ever like formally sat down and my dad or my mom was like, this is what an entrepreneur is. Like, I don't think anyone actually had that conversation with me. I think as a child, we observe everything. And also to your point about your surprise looking back at your journey, kids are so open-minded. They're so creative. They're always trying new things. And I think if we actually started to lead our lives as adults a little bit more like when we were kids, the potential and the possibility for what we can do could be endless. If we actually started to think more of when we were like children, you don't have a lot of ego when you're a child. You don't care what people think. And you just go for it. And if we could kind of approach life that way now, I think things could be different for a lot of people. But going back to my parents' conversation, I don't think they really talked to me about it. I think it was more so me watching them day in and day out, hearing the conversations my dad would have about hiring, about marketing, about startups. I think it was more so being an observer than it was them sitting me down and saying, like, this is what you need to do, sweetie. Because I probably wouldn't have listened.
yeah, we probably wouldn't have even fully understood what they were even talking about at that
Exactly.
point.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so you started this business, you started working on it, and at that point, did you have any kind of training from school that made it clear for you to understand what it is starting a business, all of the different things that you have to learn as a business owner to actually put out a business into the world?
Yeah, I loaded question that I'm going to try and unpack best I can. But I do think like you're never going to be 100% prepared. There's always going to be things that come up when you start a business where you're like, whoa, didn't know I needed to understand taxes because no one taught me that in high school. But I do think so. Prior to university, I worked for, I actually built startups. That's kind of the career path that led me into branding and my interest for marketing. So when I was working on startups, that really fueled my passion for like, wow, like branding and marketing is so important. So I started taking, while I was in university, I would take like side courses. I can't remember what it's called. There's like Udemy, like there's all these little things online where you can take like courses. And on the weekends, I would study digital marketing. I would study branding because I wasn't necessarily learning those things in university. I was learning about, the basic business courses like accounting and all of those things, which have been really important to know in my business today. So I think when I started, I had a foundation for what I knew I needed to start with. I knew that I wanted to do branding and marketing. So I started with that. I knew that I had to, set up my business name and get set up, like legally speaking. I knew I had to do all those things because my parents had helped walk me through that. But, once I started a year in, there's definitely things that came up like, how do I hire? How do I hire in a way that is actually going to be beneficial and not cause a bunch of headaches? And how do you know who you need at what point of growth you're at? So those were all things that I had to coach myself through and essentially become self-taught on as I grew my business. And I think a lot of us can maybe relate to certain parts of our business that sprung up on us as we've grown. Hiring was one of the things that I don't think you really can know much about until you're in it. My dad has told me how to hire and where to go and how to conduct an interview, all of those things. But we don't necessarily grasp what is required and how to carry it out until we're in the thick of it. And I think that can, stand true for a lot of things in building our business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So you had this business, you started it, and now you're 2 years in full time. There's been a lot of change. I mean, a lot of change in the world. You're growing up as well. You're changing as a human being throughout the period of time as well, and your business is evolving, things like that. What have been the biggest changes from either a personal level or a business perspective from that initial starting point to today?
Yeah, so much. I want to speak on this in a way where maybe your audience can feel like they really relate because I on my podcast as well have been having a lot of conversations with entrepreneurs about, self-development and how we evolve with our businesses. And it's a vulnerable topic because I think I was speaking about this earlier before we started recording. But the vulnerable topic being sometimes when we evolve, the reality is we actually outgrow our business or we realize we're building something we don't love. And I think I've experienced that a little bit in year two. Year one, and I think year one for many entrepreneurs is like, let's go, like you're so motivated, your feet are on the ground, you're running. Year two, the base is set, you have clients, you have money coming in, and your day starts to, you have a common theme to your days now. You have a routine. You know what days you're doing what. You know what tasks are on the calendar. Year one, it's all about figuring that out. So it's very exciting. And I think that sometimes, I don't know if you're anything like me, but one of my biggest challenges is that I get bored so easily. I cannot do the same shit. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on this podcast, but that is something that I struggle with. And I think there's this line for me in the past 2 years of growing my business and my brand that has become blurred. And that's the question of, am I actually just bored and I need to like shake things up and take new risks? Or am I building a business I don't love? And that line has been a little bit blurred for me lately, vulnerably speaking. And I'm trying to figure out, is this just a problem that I have, that I don't feel challenged enough in my business right now and I need to take on something new or add something to what I'm currently doing? Or do I need to completely pivot, can everything I've done, and try something new? So I feel like one of the things that I've been struggling with currently is that you seek advice in these times of feeling a little bit lost, per se. I listen to podcasts, I read books, I'm doing all the things that are helping me to find clarity and to ground myself. And in that, I've noticed this common theme of everyone saying, like, just follow your vision, know your why. And the reality is, we don't always fucking know that. We don't always know what our vision is. It's not always clear to some people. So to say that, to like take that advice, it almost elevates your frustration. And I know that a lot of people will be able to relate to this just because of the conversations I've had offline. So I think I want your audience to know, like, if you're in a season of uncertainty, which is very common in entrepreneurship, just like be okay with it and work with where your feet are on the ground right now. I think we can like look to the future way too often, and it creates unparalleled levels of stress and anxiety in the day we're living in right now. So I'm just learning to sit here and trust the process. I know that sounds so basic, but I think if you need clarity on your vision, you just have to trust that whatever you're doing today is going to ultimately lead you to where you want to go. And it's okay if you change your mind. It's okay if your vision changes. It's okay if what you want is not the same as what you wanted last year. And that's okay. I just want people to know that, because I think a lot of people are living in pain right now by thinking they have to keep creating, keep pushing this thing forward that they don't actually love. I hope that
Mm.
makes sense. I know that was a
Yeah,
bit of a vent, but it was a very personal, like heavily loaded share.
I can definitely understand where you're coming from. For me, I think it was year one. It happened actually relatively quickly, where I started to discover that I didn't love what I was building.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why was that I was conforming to the industry norms as to what I was supposed to be offering based off
Right.
of who I thought I was in my title type thing. And like you said, I get bored extremely quick. I am not a 9 to 5. This is my job. This is what I'm doing every single day. I am very much projects, short stint, high impact, out quickly type thing.
Yep. I'm the
And
same.
OBM retainers, I was actively discouraging my clients from choosing it. And even it was my highest freaking package. And I was sitting there like, no, 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 no. You don't need that one.
You don't want
We'll do
that.
this one that's lower and cheaper. Because I was like, no, I don't want to manage your business and do the same crap every single
Right.
day. Like that's just not how I'm built. Yet I kept those services. And then
Yeah.
I finally like came to the realization with coaching that I was like, wait a minute, this is my business. I can choose what I offer, what I do every day. I don't have to like conform to what I think everybody else is doing. I can like custom tailor my services to how I work best and how I'm going to best create that impact in my
Yeah.
clients' businesses. So that
Right.
was a huge realization. So yes, I totally agree that you can be in that spot and have to take a moment, however long that needs to be, to really reflect, because you don't want to continue moving down that path and be at the end and be like, what, I wasted all this time creating something that I
Yeah.
absolutely hate.
You know what
Or
I
like,
think too, is that a lot of people, the reason they continue on the path is because they're afraid of being the new guy or the new girl, per se. They don't want to. I was talking to my boyfriend the other day. It's the book by Ed Milet, The Power of One More, and there's a few bits in that book that talk about like identity shifts, and that in our life we create an identity, typically around our career and other things, family, etc. But typically it's based on the title we give ourselves from our career. And that identity, once it's formed, is very hard to change. And I think that's why so many people are out here not living their truths. So I just want whoever's listening to know, if you're craving change, if you want to pivot, you can change your identity any day of the fucking week. You just have to be willing to put your ego aside and be okay with being new at something. It doesn't mean you can't master it. It just means you're going to go through a new cycle of evolution, a new awakening per se about shifting your identity. And I think that's why so many of us stay stuck and we stay on the path of building something we don't love because we're scared of shifting our identity.
Yeah, it is a huge shift to go through and to
Yeah.
accept. Change is hard. Change in
Yeah.
any kind of thing, whether you're like changing CRMs or like project management tools or anything like that, it is hard to adapt to. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with being able to pivot and make those changes.
Right.
So
Exactly.
do it regularly, like adjust
Yeah.
to the change. Because as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to adapt. There's going
Yep.
to be constant changes in the industry and AI that's brand new, that's going to
Oh my
impact a lot of
God.
businesses. You have to be adaptable and you have to get comfortable with that because otherwise you're not going to be able to keep up.
Oh yeah. AI, I mean, that's a whole other conversation
Yeah.
on its own, but that is also something to the point of like where the market is going, what's happening with technology. We have to
Mhm.
look at these emerging trends and
Mhm.
be able to pivot. You might not have to change your whole business, but there's things that are happening that regardless, no matter what, no matter if your vision is super freaking clear, no matter how clear it is, you're going to have to pivot no matter what because
Yeah.
stuff around us is changing. Look at copywriters. If you don't think they're shaking in their boots right now because of Jasper and Chat GPT, like they're probably terrified.
Yeah.
I would be if
I
I
would
was a
be.
copywriter. I'd be thinking about a million other things of how I can pivot right now. And who's to say that won't happen to you or I? So we always have to be on our toes, ready to change, ready to shift, and be okay with it, regardless of what we've known in the past or what we know today.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that. That's good.
Don't mean to
I,
jab copywriters because I love them. I love
oh,
copywriting. I think
I just
so
hired one
much.
and
Yeah, I truly see the value in
oh
copywriting.
God,
I
yeah.
just think AI is going to be a massive, spin for them to
Yeah.
deal with.
I think that something to keep in mind with copywriters is they're adding a level of personalization, human
Right.
voice to it, which I think is
Exactly.
essential when it comes
Mhm.
to your website copy, your marketing copy, your brand message or your brand mission and vision and how you communicate. I think that's essentially very, very important. So
Mhm.
hopefully everything settles on that a little bit for them because that would be scary for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, the personalization still needs to be there. I think no matter how big AI gets, it will always need to be there. So I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah. I want to go back to the vision piece that you're
Okay.
like I don't know what that is, and it's funny because I've been in the same boat where I'm like I have an idea of what I want it at this current state with what I currently know is
Right.
possible, but I'm not ready to firm up that vision at this point
Mm,
because as I continue on this journey, there's going to be new ideas that come in. I'm going to want to pivot. I'm going to want to shift and like do these other things and whatnot. So I'm like, I'm working towards this right now, but there's like this whole other path that is going to open up once I continue to further develop my knowledge and understanding and
right.
whatnot.
Right.
You don't need to have
Yeah.
it all figured out.
No, and I think lately I've been exploring spirituality a bit more and tapping into that and learning more about it because it's just something that interests me. And in that, I feel something that's actually helped bring me a bit more clarity on, the journey to becoming is literally leading your life with intuition. if you can follow your intuition 9 times out of 10, you can create a life that is fueled by purpose and passion, because you're literally listening to your instincts. There's nothing more powerful than that. There's not a business coach out there, there's not a Google search out there or a podcast out there that can tell you what to do with your life. I mean, there's a lot of great, incredible resources out there that you can learn from. But at the end of the day, we ultimately need to trust ourselves. I was actually having this conversation. This might be a little off topic, so feel free to cut it out if you want, about business coaches and the fact that everything they teach is based off an opinion, and that opinion is stemmed from their experiences. So at the end of the day, whether you love your business coach or not, please take what you're learning with a grain of salt and make decisions that are coming from you trusting yourself, listening to your intuition at the end of the day. Because I think in my first year of business, I took what people were saying way too literally, and I almost accepted their vision as mine, only to realize that I hadn't been listening to my own intuition. And ultimately, that led me down the path of unfulfillment, of sitting here and questioning, well, what is my vision? Because I've spent so much of my time investing in other people's opinions, investing in other people's frameworks, but I haven't been looking at my own. So I think that's important to know. I'm not saying don't trust your business coach, but just trust yourself first and lead with your intuition. I'm trying to lean more into that every day. And I think it honestly only can come from being quiet with yourself, having the time to reflect, which is not always an easy thing to do.
No, it's not. It's really not. And I totally
Yeah,
agree with you. Business coaches, yes, they're fantastic. But when you do engage one to work with, make sure that they're going to empower you to look inside, empower
right.
you to make decisions based off of what you think is going to work best for you. They're not just going to tell you what to do. They're going to help you make those decisions and arrive to the
Yeah,
places that you need to land on your own. And of course, they can provide their guidance based off of their own experience and what they've learned in the industry and whatnot. But yes, absolutely, do what feels good to you. You don't have to take every single thing that they say to heart. You know, like,
yeah,
they're not there to basically create your business for you based off of their advice, right? You're
yeah.
there to take what you can apply and have them help open you up to more.
Yeah. I think a lot of the times when we feel lost on our vision, on what we want to do with our brand or our business, we do look for that business coach. But where that can be problematic is that you're essentially becoming extremely codependent on them to build your business and your vision. So that's what I would change moving forward is I'm really looking inwards right now. And when I have that clarity, I will go get a business coach who empowers me to unfold that vision that I've created. And I think that's where things need to switch around, specifically for early stage entrepreneurs who will ultimately feel lost. When you're first starting out, you're looking at everything. You're on Pinterest, you're on Instagram, you're looking at what everyone else is doing. And it can be so hard to figure out what that vision is when all you're doing is consuming external content.
Exactly. Oh God, that first year, from that perspective, the imposter
Oh, yeah.
syndrome, from being able to, like, I
Horrible.
mean, I don't know about everybody, maybe younger people who are already like actively on social media often and daily. But when I stepped in, I wasn't actively on social media. I
Right.
wasn't scrolling every single day. Like, it was a rare occasion. And even my social media was like very restricted to just like family and friends. So when I stepped into business and I was opened up to this whole new world, it was hella overwhelming.
Yep.
And imposter syndrome creeped in so fast and so hard because it was like a brand new exposure that I wasn't used to. So it
Yeah.
really created a huge negative impact for sure.
Yeah. I could see that. And I think another thing that I think a lot of people in the online business space struggle with, not to speak for everyone, but I do think that this resonates with a lot of people, is that ultimately we have to spend a lot of time on social media. That's just a fact. And that can be really hard on your mental health. So I think as we evolve, I think it's important to try and find new ways to grow our business and not just rely on social media, because that can be the gateway to burnout. If you're consuming too much, if you're worried about posting too much, if you're just plainly speaking on your phone having too much screen time, it takes so much creativity away from you. When I get my best ideas, I'm not consuming. I'm outside, I'm on a hike, I'm working on, I'm drawing, I'm painting, I'm doing something that has nothing to do with social media. That's when I feel my most creative. And I think if we can tap a little bit more into what evokes our creative side, we can feel more fulfilled in our businesses. But social media drains us. And it's this, I don't know if I would call it a double standard. That's not what I want to call it. But it's almost like it's black and white. It's like there's one side of us, it's like, okay, I know I have to be on social media, but it's draining your creativity. It's draining your energy. It's not making you feel good. So, but the other side of us we know we need to use it to market. So it's like this double-edged sword of how do we find balance? That's what it is. It's a double-edged sword. How do we find the balance between consuming and creating without feeling like we're not on social enough? Because people will make you feel that. Oh, you're not posting enough stories. You're not sharing enough reels. You're not engaging with other accounts, blah, 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 blah. And that can really eat you alive when you're building your business.
I know. Recently, I've been like, all these like businesses out there that have like storefronts and like offices and stuff. And I'm like, they're just doing the work. They're not having to spend all this time doing stories and like sharing their
Yeah.
personal stuff and like being online. And I'm like, I just like, oh, sometimes I'm like, I just want to do my job. I just want to serve clients. I don't want to like be
Do the other
forced
stuff. Yeah.
to do this. I don't know. It's a whole other beast these days.
Oh, yeah. I totally understand what you're saying because I think I love branding. Like, I know that is part of my business that I love, and that has nothing to do with me personally showing up on social media, but I know that I have to. So again, it's that sort of like the back end work when I'm actually helping a client on call with them, building a brand, love it. Could do that all day. But when I have to create a carousel talking about what I did for them and what I do and what my services are, I don't I don't really like doing that. I like the client facing stuff, and I think that's kind of, where you are going with that as well. Just because we have an online business doesn't mean we're going to love all aspects of it, marketing
Yeah.
and social media being one of them.
Yeah. 100%. I will take doing taxes
Yeah.
over the whole. Well, for me, like my own, like I prefer doing that type of stuff
Right,
than
right.
talking on camera. And sometimes it's hard when you're not having a great day and maybe things are happening in the personal life and you have to show
Yeah.
up with a smile because your energy impacts your community as well.
Mhm,
So it's
mhm.
like, it's tough having to be at the forefront so much as well.
Yeah, and to that point about, like, you have to show up for your community, I think that's another thing that is really challenging for entrepreneurs because we always want to show up as, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to take on the challenge and super confident and super willing. And the reality is we don't always feel that way, but we don't feel like we can share that. And that is what can make us feel like we're so freaking alone. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, go on.
I don't know if you feel this way, and this could be
Probably do.
so like you want to be vulnerable. Obviously, you want your community to get to know you and all facets of you and on a personal level because you are the business. They have to connect with you, to trust you, they have to like you and whatnot in order to eventually hopefully want to work with you or even to just be a part of your community, right?
Mhm.
um, what kind of has been getting to me is like seeing people post photos of themselves crying to show their
Mhm.
community that they're having a hard day. And on one side, I'm like, it does, it does make sense because I'm like, you're showing your community that things are not always okay. And it's okay
Right.
to show that. But I'm like, you are having a deep moment in your life and you felt the need to take a picture of yourself crying and to
Yeah.
show however many people are in your community that you're crying. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if like that's something that I need to work on, but I'm just like,
I can totally see it through the lens that I feel you're seeing it through, in the sense that I can recall most times I've broken down, had an anxiety attack, and cried over something to do in my business. And not once have I thought to like set my phone up on my tripod.
talk about it afterwards and share your experience from like that perspective.
Yeah.
But like,
I
I don't know,
just can't
sometimes
see myself in those moments. They're so painful sometimes, depending on what you're going through, personal, professional, whatever it is. Ultimately, if you're sitting in your room crying, there's something that is feeling extremely painful for you. And for me to, there's something that feels I don't want to use the word fake, because I don't love that word.
like disingenuous or like it,
It's
like
like,
there's a word for it. I know what you mean.
it's tough because I get that in portraying this online, you're trying to be authentic, but in a
Mhm.
weird way, it feels inauthentic to film myself crying. So
Yeah.
I, it's kind of confusing to me, because
Hmm.
I understand the point of sharing something like that, the vulnerability in it. And I know that that's something that's hard to share. So in that, I applaud some people who have shared those things, because I recognize that's not easy. It takes a lot of guts to post something like that.
Hmm.
But again, going back to authenticity, I don't know how authentic I would feel if I was literally bawling and holding my phone up. I don't know. To me, that feels like
Yeah.
I'm forcing it.
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm struggling. I'm like, what is that line?
Yeah,
Like,
like where's the
you know
line
what
in
I
the
mean?
sand?
Like as a business owner in corporate or out there, are they like, are they feeling the need to show their communities that they're having a tough day and posting an image of them crying? I understand the
Right,
sharing of the journey and the experiences so that people can feel like they resonate and maybe they learn something that can help them in their own situation and whatnot. But I'm just like,
right.
sometimes I feel like social media is like taking it to the whole other level that may not be super healthy.
Necessary. Yeah. I think there is a healthy, I do think there's a line
Hmm.
when it comes to how vulnerable you're being with your audience. I think some things are meant to stay personal, because there is a difference between your personal life and your professional life. I mean, for me at least, I know that there are things in my personal life that I particularly like to keep private, and that's just me. If
Hmm.
you're not like that and you want to post about anything and everything, that's fine. But I don't think that makes me inauthentic. I just know that part of me likes to keep things a little bit more sacred.
Hmm.
And that's just something, there's just some things I hold close, near, and dear to my heart that I'm not willing to expose to the judgment of the internet. And whether or not that threshold for judgment is bigger or smaller for you, I don't think it's fair for us to say that you're inauthentic for sharing less of it. I think if you're sharing a lot of it, good for you. That's great. If you're sharing very little, well, maybe that's just because you genuinely are a more private person, and that should be respected across the board. I think if you're hell bent on building a personal brand, yes, you may need to be a bit more vulnerable. That's just part of connecting with people. But
Yeah.
I think everyone has their threshold, and wherever you're at, on that threshold, it shouldn't take away or add to your authenticity. It's just you being you.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of where it can get confusing, especially for new entrepreneurs coming in is, and this leads into my question. We're getting into business now and your expertise, but there's a lot of a push right now for personal brand building, right?
Right.
Where you're building that element of yourself being at the forefront as you as a person, and then you have your business branding as well, separate.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you coexist and figure out what works best for you, and like how much should you share, like what is appropriate, like what is the difference between personal and business branding, like as a whole, because it can get very confusing when you see online that people are posting to that extent of posting images in very difficult, challenging situations. But then I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
is that something that I should be doing as a new business owner, on my business page, because I'm also trying to build my personal brand?
Right. I
Like
think,
love your
okay,
insights on that.
yeah. So let's unpack this. Um, for a personal brand, I think if we are speaking to those that may be a bit more reserved and questioning, do I have to share all the moments I've cried in my bedroom? The answer to that is honestly, it's up to you. But more specifically speaking, I think if you are going to share something vulnerable and you are a bit more reserved, just share about your journey. A series, and I can give you like a quick example. A series I've started on my Instagram. I wouldn't say it's a series, but I do it at least once a month. Is I share with my audience things that I'm struggling with, and I don't post a video of me crying. I don't post. It's usually clips of my life. It's clips of me taking my dog for a walk. It's clips of me sitting here working on my laptop. So it's showing me and what I'm building and sharing the struggles along the way. And to me, that's my threshold for my personal brand. You will never see me posting a video of me crying, but you will see me sharing about my journey and some of the more challenging things that I've dealt with and that I've persevered on. I will share that with my audience. And I think that threshold needs to be decided by you. I think when you're building a personal brand, we can't show up and say, "Oh, this person is so successful because they overshare so much, so should I." I think that your personal brand is one that someone will fall in love with because it is so in alignment to you. People want to work with me because of me. So if I'm sharing layers of myself that actually make me uncomfortable, well, that's not really me. So I'm drawing people in on these false pretenses. So I think when you're creating your personal brand, something that can also support you if you're not wanting to share, overshare a whole lot. It also depends on what you're selling, what your services are, what kind of industry you're in. I will state that first when you're building a personal brand. Um, like take a business coach, for example. Their personal brand, they may share more of the transformations. They might share more of the conversations they're having behind the scenes with people, their opinions, their thought leadership. And that's really creating a personality for their brand that people can connect to. And when it comes to a business brand, because businesses per se, like let's say Tesla, for example, obviously the personality, like the CEO is backing a lot of the company, but Tesla does have its own personality regardless of what Elon Musk is saying. Tesla is a brand in and of itself, and there's business brands don't have a foundation for personality, so we have to create that personality, which is, I can go down this whole rabbit hole, but that's where brand archetypes play a big role in creating a business brand's personality. As opposed to building a personal brand, you have a base to go off of because you can talk to that person about their values, their beliefs, what they want to share, what they're all about. So that's kind of where the differences lie in building the two. And I wanted to mention a combination because that's kind of what I have. So there are people like us who operate under a business name. For me, the social acre, but also play a key role in sharing some more personal brand along the way, injected throughout our business brand. And I think the answer to your question about, how much is enough, for me personally, I try to keep about 20% of my content personal. The rest is about my business, about my client transformations, about the social acre brand. And I found that's worked for me in the sense that it's not an overload of Teri, but it's a good enough blend where my audience has the opportunity, if they want, to consume a little bit about me and me only, to form that connection, and then they can consume more about my brand. So yeah, I would say there's the personal brand, the business brand, and there's those out there that have a bit of a combination.
I love that. Okay, so when it comes to branding, I've seen this very much all over all of your branding is creating a memorable brand.
Yeah.
So I would love to dive into how do you create a memorable, you know what I mean, memorable brand.
Tongue twister.
What are the elements that go into building that?
There's a lot. And I do want to say first that building a memorable brand is not about being the best. It's about being able to approach your industry with your unique angle in a way that positions you and defines you so that you can essentially become an authority in your field, which every brand wants.
Mhm.
And the framework that I use to break it down is the Activate framework. I'm going to try and get it right here because I didn't write it down in front of me. And the A stands for audit and archetype. And archetype is essentially just a fancy word for brand personality. That's usually where I like to start in creating a memorable brand, because a personality is essentially what allows people to form any sort of connection with you. Think about your best friend right now. Like, why do you like them? It's probably because of their personality. And the same thing goes for brands. The reason we like Tesla, the reason we like Zara is because the way that they're marketed to us, it's desirable to us. So first and foremost, it's creating that personality. C is characteristics. So those are things like your brand voice, your brand characteristics, the things that make you you or make your brand your brand. T is, I think T is thought leadership. So that's where a little bit of your personal brand comes into play, right? Because you're speaking on things that are your opinions. What unconventional views do you have? What possibilities do you provide? Things that stem from your personal experiences. Where am I? So I would be identity. That's where the visual component comes into play. Logos, colors, fonts. What are people visually seeing before they read? Which a lot of people think a brand is just but as you can see, there's a lot more
It's
to
a
it.
lot more.
Yeah. V is for oh my God, I'm so sorry. I should have wrote this down
Oh,
in
good.
front of me. What? Visibility. Hopefully you can cut out me
There's a
saying
lot of
ums
words
and
to remember.
yeah, I know. I totally should have wrote it out. I'm sorry. But V is for visibility. So this is essentially once you've formed your brand, you have your personality, you have your messaging, and now you can start working on those initiatives that are going to propel your brand's presence everywhere. So working on visibility initiatives, like if you're pitching to get on media outlets, if you're going on podcasts, if you're writing blog posts, all of those are great visibility initiatives to start with once you've formed your brand. A is for authority. So that goes hand in hand with visibility. You're putting yourself out there, you're sharing your thoughts, you're sharing more about your brand. And essentially, the more you do that, the more consistent you're doing that, you are going to drive authority if you do that for a long period of time. Anyone can build authority. It's just a matter of being consistent. And then T is for transformation and E is for experience. So transformation, that's really when you have your presence now and you're ready to be a memorable brand. You're in people's spaces, you're connecting with the right people, with the right message, the right visuals, and you have a psychology-backed brand that I don't like to say lures people in because I think that can come off as wrong, but it helps you connect with the right people. And experience is all about how you're making your clients feel when they're actually deciding to work with you. So there's all of those components that go into creating a beautiful, memorable, activated brand. And I really am hell-bent on educating people on that because just there's way too many misconceptions about brand and branding out there. So what I would take away from that is, please, if you're building a brand, if the reason you might feel confused about where you're going with things, and that might be because you're only focusing on the visual component. The minute we get clear on all our strategy, what to post will actually come way easier to you. what to share, what kind of blog to create, that all stems from strategy, messaging, creating this memorable brand. It will become a lot easier to share what you're about when you're clear on what that is, while still leaving room for you to evolve, because that is an inevitable part of growing a business. So yeah.
Yep, absolutely. I love that. I love that you captured the entire thing because you are right. A lot of people just focus on the identity perspective or,
Yeah.
maybe a couple more in there, but there's just so much more to a brand itself. And a lot of it gets missed, unfortunately, which then creates a lot of confusion and, not, what's that word? Not cohesive, like incohesiveness.
Yeah, like you're doing something different over here and different over there,
Mhm.
and you're trying to like throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. Whereas, like, if you
Exactly.
just brought it back to the basics and created the
Mhm.
foundations first, um, you're creating something that make sure like you're giving yourself space to evolve. You can always rebrand. You can update your visuals, your imagery, your colors. If you want to add a color to your palette, those are all things you can do. I'm not saying once you've created it that it's like concrete, you can't change it. But I think what has to be concrete is the brand strategy piece, is having the foundations for what message you want to share with your audience.
Yeah. Absolutely. Mm, well said. Okay, that's good. Now, you talked about thought leadership a little bit.
Oh
We
yes.
won't dive too much into this because I know we're getting close to time here. It's been such a great conversation, but how do you suggest those that are starting to begin to share their thought leadership to get over a little bit of that angst or that anxiety with,
Mhm.
sharing opinions and
Right.
putting their thoughts out there that may not always be well received or may be contradictory to what the industry is saying or something like that.
Right. I understand that fear completely because at the end of the day, we're all human and we want to feel that we belong. But unfortunately, we live in a society where judgment and criticism is totally inevitable, especially if you're going to put yourself out there. So, to your point about, the fear of putting yourself out there, this is really just our way of humans as saying we're afraid to receive criticism. We're afraid of others judging us. But let me tell you something. No one is ever going to care about what you're doing as much as you do. If I let the fear of judgment or criticism get in the way of, every time I wanted to chase a dream, I would not have started my business. I think that we actually need to lean in to the things that scare us and maybe even question why it scares you. I think that if we can stay curious in the pursuit of becoming, and if this helps in the grand scheme of things, really you putting yourself out there and potentially failing isn't actually going to affect anyone other than you. So who cares what people think? And something I like to reflect on that I'll wrap up with that hopefully can encourage your audience to just do the damn thing. I want you to think of any great story you've heard, an entrepreneur, someone in your life that has influenced you positively. Think of their story that's captured your attention, that has left you in awe. It's likely because they've shared a huge setback or a huge failure. They're sharing something they've overcome, and we're in awe because of it. The people that we see that are the most successful have experienced the most challenges, have failed the most, have not been afraid to set aside their ego and be the new guy and look stupid. They've put themselves out there in fear. They did it while they were scared. And that's what creates essentially who we are today in this moment, is when we can act imperfectly and release expectations on the outcome, and just know that if something if something scares you, it might be worth trying. I know everything personally that has scared me in my business has been the ultimate either failure or success, in the sense that I tried it and surprised myself at, wow, I'm actually capable of way more than I thought. So you only have one shot at this life. That's what it comes down to. And nobody cares more than you do. So if there's something you want to try, if there's a business you want to start, if there's a business you want to shut down and try something new, nobody is telling you you can't do it except for yourself. you have to get
Yeah.
out of your own way.
Oh
I would
God,
recommend to
absolutely.
your audience to read the book if this is something you're actually struggling with. I would recommend for them to read the book, The Mountain is You.
That's a good one. I love
Yeah.
her.
We get in our own way 9 times out of 10, not other
Yeah,
people.
absolutely. Absolutely. I can definitely second that.
Yeah.
Amazing. So before we end, I would love for you to share just a little bit about your services, what you have available to support your community and those tuning in today.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity for that. First and foremost, this was an amazing conversation. So I have three services primarily that I like to focus on. One is the one-on-one consulting. This is brand and marketing consulting, where we take a very holistic approach to help you build a memorable brand. I have a membership, lower level, entry level membership for people to join who are really looking to get started with branding. Maybe they're not sure. Um, they don't want to make the big investment yet. It's a great place to start to have community conversation, education with me, and just get your feet wet if it's something you're considering. And then the third thing that we're focused on as well is social media and brand management. So once we've helped create the brands, we love to manage them and keep them running online. So that's pretty much all about the Social Acre. If they want to learn more, you can head over to the Social Acre on Instagram. That's where you can connect with me most of the time. 99% of the time I'm there. And yeah, you'll find all the links if you go to Instagram. All this stuff is there. So
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, Teri, for having a very vulnerable conversation with us. I
yeah,
truly enjoyed learning more about your experience and everything that you've learned along the way, but also, of course, your expertise. So I know lots of people are going to have great takeaways from all of
yeah,
this. So thank you again
I
for
hope
joining
so.
us.
Thank you so much for having me, Jessica. It was an absolute pleasure.